Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Hey, Dana, I feel like it's been a while. I know
It has been a while.
So what's going on new with you?
It has been a while. Let's see, anything new? I'm just trying to think of something new that since the last time that we talked, other than work, honestly. I've been boring lately.
Yeah, you've been busy. I know that for sure.
I've been busy. Yes, very, very busy. What about you?
Well, I'm trying to think, 4th of July, I guess you probably did 4th of July too. We had every one of our kids and grandkids here, and it was so fun. It was for like a week. And then all of a sudden the house went quiet and it's like, okay, now what do I do? So there's always that adjustment period when your house is busy and full and then it's empty.
Should have taken off and gone to San Diego.
No, that's what Jimmy said too, but he's about to go fishing. And, sometimes I just miss the routine of home. I can meet my trainer twice a week. I mean, there's just things that if you just get on a plane all the time, you miss out on those things. So we travel enough that I kind of do enjoy just getting back into routine and stuff like that. So, Hey, I'm super excited. Why don't you tell everyone about our guest today?
Yes, perfect. I am very excited too. Okay, so this has been like a long, long time coming, but we did a contest a while ago, a posting contest on social media, and Lexi was actually the winner of our contest to come on and be a guest. So I'm very excited, that we have Realtor Lexi Gladman on, and she's from Charleston, South Carolina. So welcome, Lexi.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for always listening and supporting us, by the way. Lexi shares it all the time and everything.
Oh, we appreciate that so much. That's the greatest.
Yes,
somebody can give us.
I'm a number one fan.
Awesome. Love it.
I'm a number one fan for sure.
Oh, we love it.
That means we'll have to stay interesting. Good luck.
That's right. That's right.
I'm interesting enough.
So Lexi, I know, actually let's start by you kind of telling everybody, how long have you been in the business? When did you get in the business? A little bit of background.
Sure. So I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, originally, right outside of Atlanta. And I went down to Statesboro, Georgia, to Georgia Southern University and graduated from there. But while I was in school, I started in property management. So I worked in property management all while I was in school, and that firm was connected to a real estate firm. So I was around it there, and I knew that's really the direction that I wanted to go. So once my now husband graduated, we moved to Augusta, Georgia. He's from Augusta. So I got a job working for a local builder there. And I was lucky enough to be able to learn from someone who had been with a local brokerage in Augusta for many years, top producing agent, and she was my boss at the Builder Association. And I absolutely loved learning from her. And I didn't know it then, but now looking back, I realized that so much of what I do now I use from that experience, because my whole business now is open houses. And at the time I was sitting an open house every single day. So I learned to ask the right questions and, the body language and building rapport very quickly, because I had to sell in that neighborhood. So I'll elaborate on that in a little bit, but I didn't realize it at the time, but now, it's super evident to me. So I worked for the builder for a little over a year. And then I actually got recruited by a Keller Williams agent that I did a deal with while working for the builder. She needed an assistant. And at the time I knew I didn't want to stay on site forever. And I knew I wanted to make the jump to general brokerage eventually. So I took the assistant job. Only lasted about 6 months. So I apologize if she's listening. Wasn't the best assistant out there. Learned that fairly quickly, but I went on after that to being an agent. So I pretty immediately joined a team in Augusta, and I learned so much from them. They were a small team and just really faith-based, and I just loved every bit of what they stood for, and I learned so much from them. And then I got married, and when you get married, apparently you have to move. So I moved again to Charleston and started over my real estate career again. So I was in Augusta selling with Keller Williams for about 2 years. And when I moved to Augusta, I knew no one. I only knew my husband's family. So I started from the ground up in Augusta and then did that for 2 years and then decided to start from the ground up again in Charleston, which y'all know is super hard to do. So full disclosure, the first 6 months of that, I was like, I would come home to my husband and be like, should I go back to being on site? I don't know if I can build this here. You know, I'm working again with not knowing anyone and having to completely start over with, you know, database and everything. So it was a real struggle at first, but, you know, I finally did it. And to be honest, what did it for me was I went to family reunion for the first time that year. And Gary was on stage the first day that he spoke. And he said, he told a story about an agent who had done 26 open houses a month. And I got back and I said, you know, I'm going to do that. I said, I love open houses. And when I moved to Charleston, I was under the impression that I had to cold call to build my business. And it's just kind of what I'd been told. And I don't love that world. So after hearing Gary say that, I came back and I was like, I need to prove to myself that I can do this. So I held 20 open houses in March. Family reunion happened in February. And I held 20 open houses in March. And just from March alone, I had about over 6 million potential sale volume in my pipeline just from March. And wow. I closed one immediate deal from that month. And then I've closed several since then from that month.
Wow.
Wow. That's awesome. So I don't know I can't remember if you and I've ever talked about this. I don't think we have, but I worked for a property management company and then got my license and worked for a new construction builder. And
what?
Yeah, that's crazy. And there's, it just reminded me, and actually I'm just sitting here thinking of somebody right now who I know who kills it, who works at a property management company. And I'm thinking, why has he never got his license? Because there can be a lot of great real estate agents come from the property management world.
Oh yeah. Like when I look back on all of the steps that I've taken, you know, and I'm very young. So, but still, when I still look back, you know, just from college and working in property management, the people skills that you have to develop, because, you know, people are really just calling you with their problems in property management. I got called once, you know, to be like, thank you. And it was the greatest day in property management. But, you know, you have to learn, you know, how to talk to people and, you know, be able to address their concerns and a lot of problem solving just there. And I was in college, so I started with that, you know, and then I touched on how much I learned in the new home sales job. I mean, it is a different world in a lot of, you know, spaces, but over the grand scheme of things, you know, you're like I said, learning to ask those questions and convert, you know, and close. That's what they really train you to do in that field. So I've just learned so much. And then not to mention the 2 teams I was on, you know, for that amount of time. So this is my 5th full year in the real estate world.
So a couple of things that kind of jumped out at me, Dana, that I kind of want to highlight for our audience here is, one, I'm going to look at property management companies and new home sales for talented people. I put that on my list. I am definitely going to do that. The other thing that I put on there is, you know, she made me think of something when you talked about you moved to a new place and you didn't know anybody and you had to build your business and you didn't really like cold calling. I was asked to be on a mastermind call the other day of really, really top producers. And most of these people in this group actually are from the philosophy, their trainer that they followed for years is cold call, cold call, cold call, cold call. And so they were asking me questions about how did you take your business and find somebody that is talented enough to step in and keep it running. You know, we seem to always, you know, lose that person or can't find that person. And my first couple of thoughts were, you know, first of all, really you have to build a brand. You have to build a name. If you don't want to have to get up every day and grind it out with cold calling, you've got to build a name recognition that when people are in your town think of real estate, they think of you. And so I said 2 things. One, you're probably not doing enough of that. And number 2, you're going to have a hard time finding talented people that will come on your team and do nothing but cold call, cold call, cold call. And so what I love is you found a different way. Most people, when they don't love it, they just give up and say, well, if that's the only way to do it, I can't do this business. But there's so many other ways that you could build your business other than just hammering out phones. So I love that.
Yeah, I think that's so great. Lexi, will you talk for a second about the open houses? Because, man, there's a lot of agents that would love to get that much business from open houses. And I don't think that they think that they're as committed enough to do 20 open houses in a month. Talk a little bit about that. Like, did you personally hold all 20?
Yes, I held all 20 myself. I found all 20 myself. So it was definitely a task, like I had to put systems in place to be able to do it. And it's not something I would recommend doing month over month over month. It's definitely more of like a quarterly thing, in my opinion. Now, still hold a good volume the other months too, but just month over month, it can become very overwhelming because we all know that the money's in the follow up, even with open houses. So, you can get all of that business, but you have to give yourself time to follow up with all of those leads. So yeah, I got back and just put the plan in place, and I did have a system as far as like every Monday finding all the open houses I was going to host that day. It basically was Wednesday and Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m., Friday from 11 to 2, and then every Saturday and Sunday, basically all month that month. And yeah, it took commitment, and I think for anybody looking to do open houses, it's all about consistency. I made Google Forms that month, you guys. Like, I tracked everything. I tracked the weather. I tracked if I put balloons on the signs, how many signs I put out, how many turns it was away from the main road. I tracked everything that month. And, there were a few things that might have stood out, but as far as I get asked all the time, like, what's the right time to do it and what's the right day to do it? And it's really so dependent on where the property is and many other things. But at the end of the day, it's just about being consistent with it. Like I read the one thing well, let's be honest. I read half of the one thing like last year, and then I read the whole one thing in January of this year. So the first half I kept reading being like, I've heard this before many times. I'm like, oh yeah, because I've read it many times, but never finished the whole book. So I finally read the whole book in January of this year, and it just confirmed that open houses is my one thing, and just how to elaborate even further on that concept. So it was definitely a task, but I'm so glad I did it. And I haven't done that many a month since. I've done a lot, but not 20 yet. But now that I'm resettling and I'm on my own now as an independent agent, it's definitely something that I'm going to be planning to do at least once a quarter.
So how will you handle that, Lexi, with COVID and everything? Will they be virtual open houses? What is your plan since we've all kind of had to shift gears a little bit?
Good question. Sure. Yeah. So during COVID, I laid low for a little bit, and then I came up with a virtual plan. So we created a Google form for sign up purposes and posted that to Zillow, because a lot of my open house traffic does come from Zillow. So we created a system around virtual, and I did host several virtual open houses during the beginning. I had a pretty good turnout. I got a few buyers from doing that. But within the last month, I have hosted 3 in-person open houses. I'm taking a lot of precautions. So I stand outside the house basically the whole time and greet people. I allow one family or group in at a time. They all have face masks. They all have Lysol wipes. We have sanitizer there. So I'm very careful. And being one family at a time in the house, I've found that they're really comfortable with that. So, and then others are okay with waiting. So it's gone really well so far. I've already picked up several buyers just from those 3, and I've had an average of 5 to 7 groups come for those 3. So it's been going really well. My philosophy on that is some people might be tired of being stuck at home like I am. So, some people might want to get their feet on the ground again. So just being very precautious with it.
Yeah. And you kind of have to have both, because some people do want to get out and go do something, and then some people don't want to. So you kind of have to have a plan for both. A couple of things also that jumped out at me is, listening to her, Dana, a couple of things. One, this girl, you can tell she's talented. She's going to figure out how to win. That's just what she does and who she is. And I keep thinking about the people that had the first option at her and let her go. And so, I think back and think of the builder that she was working for. Had they done a career visioning on her or a life story, not life story, but a future self, to figure out where does Lexi want to go in her life, maybe they could have started or let her do residential sales as part of an arm of their business. But because they weren't plugged into who she was and where she wanted to go, she had to say goodbye and go do it somewhere else. And then the second thing too is if the person who hired her as a real estate assistant knew career visioning or some type of process to really understand the person, they would have behaviorally realized that she's behaviorally matched more for sales and and you really can't, you can't do both well. And I have people do this all the time. They'll try to hire somebody and either let them be an assistant and a buyer agent, a salesperson, both. And I always ask them, well, which one are they best at? Because they can't be great at both.
Yeah. Isn't that?
And if they are good at sales, they need to be their most dollar productive for you and for them is in sales. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I feel like you see that a lot when people hire somebody and they say, okay, well, they're going to come on and do admin work and they're going to sell. And usually that profile are that's two totally different profiles.
They are. And then the problem that they have is when they let them do both, they make such good money selling, but they also are the kind of behavior that likes security that they usually don't want to let go of the security job, but yet they're not doing you the best service doing your assistant job and your sales job. If they're better and more behaviorally matched for the assistant, then they really are better off to be the assistant. And if they're more behaviorally matched for sales, they're much better off to be sales. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Totally.
So that was kind of what jumped out as me as I was listening to her journey. And then the only other thing I picked up on is ideas matter. She learned from every single thing she did. And that's probably what's helped her launch her own career out on her own.
Yeah. I would say, Lexi, would you say what's the biggest lesson that you learned from starting with a new construction and being on a team versus now being an individual agent?
Yeah. So do you mean break it down for me? There's a lot of lessons.
Well, there probably is a lot of lessons. Okay. So I'm just thinking, it's not everybody is on a team and then decides to go on their own. So what were the benefits of starting on a team? And then what would you say were some of the lessons that you learned from starting that way, as opposed to just starting as an individual agent, now being an individual agent?
Yeah.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Really good question. So, becoming an agent in general can be very overwhelming. Obviously, I think everybody goes through that once you're first licensed and you're like, okay, now what? Right? Like we just got out of school and we learned so much about deeds and all this stuff, but not really how to sell real estate, the personally wise. So yeah, it was very overwhelming for me. So joining a team was just from a coaching aspect and a learning aspect. Like I'm very learning based, just like I always hear you guys say, which I think is why I love listening to your podcast, because I definitely see myself that way. And so learning from people that have done this, for years and do it at a high rate and very well is what I wanted to do. So there was no other option for me at the time than to join a team. And like I said, I'm so glad I did both times in Augusta and in Charleston. And when I moved to Charleston, the main thing was I had no idea about the area. I had never lived in Charleston. Downtown, and each market of Charleston is very different too. So being able to learn from the agents on the team who were natives to Charleston, as well as the team leader, and just all of the knowledge that they were able to share with me, it was just priceless, information. And so at the time, that was really my main reason.
Yeah.
For team.
So I'm just curious, Lexi, because I get to talk to all the people who have amazing people leave their team like you. I'm the person that they talk to because they're at that level of production.
She's the person that they call in sheer panic when they're like, Lexi's leaving my team.
Yeah. So I want to try to help the audience for someone who has had trouble with that they build teams or they don't build teams because part of their fear is they're going to get great people and then they're going to lose them. And my philosophy is people leave any organization when they feel like the dreams and goals that they have are bigger than the person that they're following, or not even so much the person, but their model. Let's just say that. Let's don't say the person, but their model, because it's really not about that person. It's more about their agenda and their model. So would you say that that's true, that at some point as a team member, you look up and you go, well, I want a really big life and I somehow don't see how I can do it in this model. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, 100%. So when I was having these feelings, I consulted with a team leader and someone here in Charleston, and they gave me the advice to read The Energy Bus. And I'm sure you guys have both read it because y'all have read a billion books, but it really breaks down, just energy. And the biggest thing for me was if you are not the bus driver and you don't like where that bus is going, then you have to get off the bus and you have to drive your own bus, you know? And I think that's a big part of it for me. Another big part, Linda, is transparency of a team. I think that's insanely important.
Again, it's not about a person. It's about values. It's about, do we match culturally? Do we have the same beliefs? Do we have the same values? And are we going to the same places?
Right.
And the intent of this conversation is only to help people who have great team members. I truly believe there are ways to keep great people on your team. And I also believe that there are times that either without myself being prepared or being the right person to keep that person, I've lost great people. And it always hurts and doesn't feel good. But I always believe there's lessons on both sides. I also believe probably some of the people that left me looked back, because they've said this to me personally, I really did better when I was with you guys. But so shame on all of us for somehow not figuring out, where are we going? Who's going with us? How are we going to get there? And make sure everybody has whatever their dreams and goals are, the opportunities big enough that we all get to get it inside there. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. And I 100% agree with that. And I think, there's really four main things for me to answer your original question. And it's transparency, it's authentic positivity, and just attitude in general of a leadership of a team and its members, because you want to be coming to an environment that you enjoy and that uplifts you, especially for someone like me who's a 95I on the disc. I thrive in that environment. So I need that positivity. And then obviously value to your specific business. So like you mentioned earlier, cold calling wasn't my business, and I found what my business was. So there still needs to be enough value around my specific business to be able to retain that person. So whatever that looks like for your members. And then also, really the last thing is what you said. It's just having the same goals and the same vision, and all of your members being aligned with that vision and that goal. I think that's super important. And it goes back to transparency, meaning like that needs to be told, right? It needs to be something like, this is what we want, this is where we're going, and do you want to be on our bus from the energy bus? So
yeah, that makes sense. And Dana, this reminds me of a guest we had real early on in our podcast, where she was a rainmaker, a team leader, and she was trying to figure out, what do I do with this person that's on my team that isn't as, positive or whatever as the rest of the group. And, even over the years, I've learned what people I lead best and what people I don't lead best. And so much of which side of the team you're on, you have to understand who you are and what you need. And what I love about that is you knew the things that you were needing and they weren't there. And it's interesting because as a leader, let's say someone's listening to this and they're thinking, well, I couldn't have been, my group's not like yah, rah, rah, all that fun, all that stuff. However, I was I don't know if you were on this trip, Dana, but when John Maxwell took our group to Dallas, were you there on that one?
No, that was right before I came.
Oh gosh, it was so good. We went to this marketing company, and what they did is they had a chief officer of fun. And I'm like, I need one of those.
I remember you saying that.
Because I like to have fun, but I'm not that natural, rah, gonna have fun. You know what I mean? But what we don't realize sometimes is it's kind of like trying to run an office without a team leader. The team leader is kind of that person. They love people. People give them a lot of energy. And there's certain people in the world that a lot of people drain their energy. And so really the truth is anything can be accomplished, and just knowing who you are and what you need is so important. Even for the person on the other side that's running the team, to learn that that's missing in your organization and you're not the one to do it. Because like Keller used to tell me all the time, if you could do it, don't you think you already would have? And I'm like, oh God, I hate when you say that, because now I'm determined I'm gonna go show you I can do it. But so I think that's a good point there is, if you're not, you can't be the person for everything. What's your unique ability? What do you bring to the table? And you can get other people that's their strength, and then that's their job to go make sure that our environment is fun and we're doing all the, socials and all the things that I'm not going to naturally probably think of.
Yeah, that's a great point. Was that the trip, by the way, where you guys met Bush. Did you guys meet George Bush in
Yes,
Dallas?
it was. Yes.
Okay, that's what, because that's how I remember that, because I always think, man, that would have been the one I would have loved to have met, was George Bush.
Yeah, it was George Bush Unplugged with just a small group. It was fabulous.
Oh, yeah.
Any leader unplugged is fabulous. You know, you got to respect them no matter what side of the table you're
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Take on the kind of responsibilities that they take on. You can always learn something.
Yeah. Yeah. So Lexi, is there anything that we should talk about that we haven't talked about? Any questions that you have, and or anything that you would share, advice from your 5th year as a real estate agent?
And
Yes, I have.
your first little bit of going off of a team onto your own.
Yeah.
Yes. I have like 5 or 6 questions. Are y'all ready?
We'll rapid fire.
Rapid fire. So, will y'all share some lessons you learned at the beginning of your career as an independent agent, and then also the beginning of your career starting your own team, or one or the other? Because, you know, now I've been on 2 teams, and I feel like I have a really good solid foundation of what I would want my own team to look like. You know, small team, good leadership, you know, just positivity and stuff like that. So I know I always hear you guys talk about failing forward. So any stories you'd want to share with me would be great.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. First thing I'm going to say, Lexi, is this. You can't figure out the size of your business or the size of the team until you figure out the size of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You got to figure out, what do I want my life to look like? Because your life and what it needs to look like is going to determine how big your business needs to be, and how big your business needs to be is going to determine how many team members need to be on it. And I think there's so many lessons when you start. It's kind of like you're going to appreciate that person's team you just got off of as soon as you start building a team. You might already appreciate them. You might at the first day thought, God, I love them. What was I thinking? You know, because that happens. It's kind of like, you know, when our kids grow up and they have their first child, they automatically call and say, how did you do it all? How are you Superwoman? You know, but until then, you know, they don't necessarily feel that way. And I think you appreciate that more as you start, because succeeding through people is the hardest thing you'll ever do. Mm-hmm. So, but time goes fast. You look very young. I don't know how old you are, and I won't put you on the spot, but I wish I was your age, but anyway, whatever. You're young and you've got a lot of time, but it goes so fast. And you want to get to freedoms as fast as you possibly can. And freedoms are created through the relationships that you build. And you don't get to have great relationships until you're valid enough for those relationships to happen. And so you're already a growth person. You're already on the track for doing that. And then freedom also comes from your money and learning how to leverage your time. So the faster you do those things, the bigger and better your life's going to be. But sometimes we go really, really slow, and we only put these little incremental things in front of us. And I would say, go spend a whole weekend or time with your husband, and you guys figure out what's the biggest, baddest life you could possibly imagine. And then get around people that make you think bigger. I was just on a coaching thing that I do, you know, and I almost didn't jump on it because it was 2 hours. And I thought, well, you know, I will. And I've already had my coaching program with this month. But one thing a guy said to me on that call, I thought, man, this is why I got to hang out with people that make me think bigger. He gave me the story, because remember, people don't do what you tell them. They only do what they self-discover. And he told me the story about a guy and gave me his name that's in the healthcare field. And he has started doing these mergers and acquisitions. And, you know, we were working on a sheet called, you know, the 4 C's, which is, you know, what do you need courage for? So the question was, what do you need courage in the next 6 months for? And we all had to answer, what is the thing we're going to need courage for? And so in doing that, he told me about a guy. When I presented mine, he told me about a guy that had done something similar that I was talking about that would take me some courage to decide to do it in the healthcare world. But it's enough relational. I went, oh my God, I've never thought about it like that. And so I can't even wait to talk to the guy that really has done it, because this guy just was telling his story and he made me think bigger. So get around people as fast as you can who think way, way bigger than you do, because that's going to cause you to, when you imagine a great life, it's going to imagine it even bigger and greater than you might could on your own. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, that's what I would say. And starting over as a brand new agent, before my license got back in the mail, an assistant's butt would be in the chair. I mean, literally, her butt would be there before that license got back. I'd never do this business again without an assistant. That'd be my 2.
I should have gone first.
I was giving you time to think. I could tell that I need to think, Linda. we do that telepathically to each other. You go. You go.
Well, before you answer, Dana, funny story, Linda, on the assistant role. I actually went to lunch with one of my past clients last week who wants to be my assistant already. And I'm like, wait, like, is it too soon? You know, so now I'm struggling with like a timeline, right, for myself of how do I do this?
Yeah. Well, and to be honest with you, when we hired our first assistant, we didn't know how we were going to pay her. And a lot of times the reason we don't hire them is we don't have the money. So here's what I'm going to tell you. You look nice and thin, but intermittent fast, because you'll save a bunch of money on food, and then just put that food towards an assistant. That's how important an assistant is. I would get, and I love food, don't I, Dana?
She does.
I love food. I would give up food to have an assistant. So whatever you got to do, go get a garage sale every week. I don't care what you have to do. Do without food, intermittent fast, do 7-day fast if you have to, but do that assistant.
I love food too.
Yeah. Take that Chick-fil-A money. I see that big old Chick-fil-A mug there beside you. Take that Chick-fil-A money and say, assistant pot, assistant pot.
That's so true. I do love a good visual. That's a really great visual you could have. Hey, actually, this is a squirrel, but Linda, I actually had a conversation last night with Craig Everly in our region. Did you know he's lost almost 50 pounds? And he said that he did bags of 4-pound bags of sugar, and he put them in his kitchen on his countertop of the, however, like 20 something bags. And for every 4 pounds that he lost, he dumped out a bag of sugar and moved it. And that's been his visual for, I think he said he's been doing it for 3 months or 4 months.
Dang, I was hoping he got to eat the sugar. I'm so mad. You got to throw it away.
He moved it over and he dumped it out, or he doesn't. Anyway, I just thought, man, I love a good visual. Everything Linda said was great. And I just jotted down 4 things. And honestly, they were kind of similar. The first one I would say is don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something. Yes. And because everybody starts somewhere someday, and we all start at different times and at different ages and at different, some people have had their family in the business, some people never have, some people are in a completely different field. So I would just say everybody starts somewhere, and don't let people tell you what you can or can't do. You have to do what Linda said, is what's going to be for your life, what you want. Number 2, I wrote down stay learning based, which I know you so are, but I think this is funny, but I say it all the time. And John Maxwell says, when you stop learning, you die. And the only way to keep growing bigger and bigger and bigger is to stay learning based. And then number 3, I wrote down who you're around matters. I never started thinking about money until I started hanging around a lot of people who had a lot of money. And same with just even the way that you do your business. And I can just remember, I wish I would have surrounded myself with higher, bigger thinkers and people who I wanted to be like more in the earlier days of my career, instead of waiting 10 years to do that, because I think I would have gotten so much, I would have done so much more faster. And because honestly, I mean, and people used to say like, oh, you're Ring of 5. And I'd be like, man, whatever. It really, I mean, when you're around people who eat a lot, you eat a lot. When you're around people that don't, dress cute, then you don't want to dress cute. I mean, I can't say that today because I'm in a t-shirt and yoga pants, and when you're around people who make a lot of money, then you want to make a lot of money. Or when you're around people who want to learn all the time, then you want to learn. It really affects who you're around. And so that would be a big one. And then the last one I wrote down is stay in your strength zone, which kind of goes with the admin thing, but I would just say know what you're not good at. Like, I'm not good at follow-up. If I don't have somebody to do follow-up for me, it's probably not, it's going to be at the very last of my list because I'm going to procrastinate it. And so I just think it's okay that there are things that you aren't good at, because all of us are not good at everything, but stay really hyper-focused in what is your strength zone, and then leverage what's not. Even if it's like a cheap $6 an hour virtual assistant until you can afford it, or whatever it is, because it'll fall to the wayside, and or you'll get so frustrated with it that it'll take you away from the things that give you good passion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm glad you said about it. I mean, I really am a strong believer of the 5 people that you spend the most of your time with.
Yeah.
And a fellow realtor of mine in town, we just put together a little girls coffee group every Tuesday for accountability, because, you know, I realized that that's something that I'm going to need in my business. And now, you know, we just started it. So anybody in Charleston, realtor, want to join us, you're welcome to. But just gathering at coffee shops every Tuesday and being honest with ourselves about our business from the week before and what we're working on this week, and just being able to voice that accountability to each other, and, you know, holding yourself accountable that way. And I think that that's huge. And hopefully that will bring a great group of people, you know, together who has these big goals for their life and for their business, because that is who I want to be surrounded with for sure.
That's awesome. Actually, you know what? I just forgot one thing too. I can't believe Linda didn't say this, and I didn't say this either, but I would say get a coach sooner too.
Yes.
I wish I would have had a coach way earlier, and I never did it because I didn't want to spend the money. And now there's no amount of money, you know, that I wouldn't, I mean, I would not eat either to be able to have the coaching. So yeah. Okay. So I know you had a ton of questions and we're about out of time. So do you want to have one more last one real quick?
Yeah. Wait, 2 more rapid fire. 2 more.
Okay, 2 more. You got it.
One more. The one is, what was the first leadership opportunity offered to you, and how did that happen? Because there's so much opportunity within Keller Williams in itself, and I just love the company so much. And I already teach my open house class in market centers, and I just want to continue climbing the leadership ladder. So do y'all know what your first leadership opportunity was within Keller Williams and how that was opened up to you?
Dana, go ahead.
Okay. The first leadership opportunity for me was to be on the ALC, the Agent Leadership Council inside a market center. From there was investor, and from there it was a team leader role, and then on from there. And really, when people ask me that, I teach a class at Family Reunion and Mega Camp about leadership opportunities, and I always just say, like, no matter what your role you're in, just bloom where you're planted. Linda's got me a bunch of cute signs that say that throughout the years, but just show up where you are. Like you teaching right now is awesome.
Yeah.
Linda,
I would say I became a teacher first because I love to share and help other people. I was on the ALC when I eventually had the opportunity. I was on the ALC. Then weird change of events. The office I was in came available, and is either get out of KW or own it. So I owned it. And not that I wanted to, but I did. And I'm glad I did now. Now we have 7. But and then regional owner came along, and I would say we're always a leader. And, you know, any opportunity you can. I love what you're doing with other agents, because most of us in this world, in the real estate world, we don't see the value in each other. And there's so much value in the relationships you'll have with other realtors, even, I think, even more so than your buyers and sellers, but we don't act that way. We don't get up every day and act as if that was the truth. And I truly believe it is the truth. Mm-hmm. So I would say, you know, just get up and I had a call earlier with someone reached out to me and said, hey, do you have any leadership positions? We've got a really neat guy that's he's a top agent. He's looking for a leadership position. And I said, sure. So as we're talking to him, he says, well, I don't think anybody ever approached me about leadership because they didn't think I'd be interested. And he never told anybody. So tell the world that you are the person that's open for more opportunity. And I'm going to go back and as one final thing, you have one more question, right? And I want to, at the end, don't let me forget, I want one final thing to tell you, because it's going to wrap into this leadership conversation that we're having. So what's your last question?
My last one is, have you ever met a successful individual agent whose KPA was the lowest on the scale? And please say yes. Asking for a friend. Asking for a friend.
Yes. I have this friend and her KPA doesn't look that good. That's so funny. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would say the same. Remember, the KPA is 25% of while it's great and amazing, to me, I don't ever really look as much at that match sheet because it's more about getting to know the person and building the relationship and understanding where their strengths and where their weaknesses are. And
to be honest with you, Lexi, when somebody was doing that career visioning on you and they were sitting there validating the KPA, and let's say it validated 100% true, then what they would also need to hear when they did your life story is you're a person that gets up, and no matter what role you're in, you do one of two things. You either figure out it's not the role for you and you get out of it, AKA assistant, or you figure out how to go win at it. And I don't care what everything else says. Give me that all day long over anything else. I'll take that in a person all day long. Yeah. So yeah, and I think we're still learning. The more people that do the KPA, the better it's going to get at some of that stuff. So yeah, well, I know lots of people that didn't look so. And by the way, even on the disc years ago, I didn't match as a mega agent, and yet I built one of the largest teams in the country when nobody had large teams and nobody had large production. So, and it absolutely said I didn't qualify as a mega agent. So don't pay any attention to any of that stuff. Just like Dana said, don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to any instrument either.
Good advice.
Awesome. So we are about out of time, but I do want to add one final thing. And Dana, if you have something you can add too, but I'm going to challenge you to do this, Lexi. Every week, ask yourself, what's the one thing that if I did that this week, it would scare the crap out of me? I mean, literally, I'd probably pee my pants if I committed to do it, and go do that one thing. Because I wish I did it naturally throughout my life, but I wish I had known about it sooner, and I consciously made myself get into commitments that scared me to death, that literally made me not sleep at night. Because what I've noticed is the more I did that, the bigger my life got. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's a horrible, courage is a terrible place to have to be. It's so much more uncomfortable than confidence, but you have to go through courage to get confidence. Yeah. So just go find the thing that scares the heck out of you next week and just do that first.
That's so good. I have nothing to end. Let's end on that because that's good.
Awesome. Well, great. I want to say thank you so much, Lexi. And thank you so much. Any questions we didn't get answered, go ahead and fire them over to us and we'll answer them on our next podcast.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure if you have them, somebody else has them.
Yeah.
And remember, if you'd like to come on the show and visit with us, send us some information at info@everythinglife and real estate. And follow us on Instagram too. You can always find out what's going on there. We'd love your questions. And most of all, what you can do best for us is to pass our podcast along to anyone who you think might find interest in the conversations that we're having. And we'd love for you to give us a review at the bottom. That always helps us also. So I'd just like to say, Lexi, thank you so much for being transparent and opening us up to us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Dana,
Lexi.
And Dana, I'll see you next week.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Lexi.
Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.